That's actually quite good, that is.
Greetings, fellow mortals. Just a reminder, saying it's just my opinion is for cowards. To get this out of the way, by the best Spider-Man movie in 2 decades, I mean non-multiverse ones. I actually do like the Spider-Verse movies the best overall, except for the OG Sam Raimi films. But it's more of a Spider-Person series rather than a focus on Peter Parker. Same thing with No Way Home. Brand New Day is the first film in a while where we're just watching Peter Parker be Spider-Man, where he is the focus. And of course there are cameos and references, but this is about Peter Parker for once. Failing to balance the different sides of his life, meaning one is non-existent, being extremely depressed, and having the writers have a grand old time kicking him over and over and over again. As such, this 100% felt like a comic book Spider-Man movie, almost as much as Spider-Man 2, which is the greatest of compliments that I can give this film. Because if there's one thing that you can always rely on in Marvel Comics, it's that they are going to kick Peter Parker when he's down until he is a bloody mess.
Oh, I made myself sad.
Jumping out of No Way Home, Peter Parker doesn't technically exist in this world anymore due to multiverse magic shenanigans. As such, his friends and allies have forgotten all about him. With Aunt May dead, he's all alone, functioning exclusively as Spider-Man without a life outside that, desperately watching as his loved ones continue to live on without him. Although he can somehow afford to maintain a supercomputer, have some type of apartment in New York without being harassed by his landlord, and has an AI constantly running analysis and giving exposition to the audience. But considering that the only time that he is out and about while not functioning as Spider-Man is when he's visiting graves, they did kind of had to get around the finances and tech issues in the story. I'll just assume that Iron Man left him a gigantic pile of funds in the form of cryptocurrency that he now uses to survive, and only he can access because only he knows the passcodes. Or, something like that, although it feels like I'm doing a bit of the writer's work here by filling in these holes.
What would you say you do here?
This step away from universe-bending consequences was necessary not only for Spider-Man, but the entirety of the MCU. When everything is the worst crisis to ever happen ever, nothing really matters anymore. Bringing everything back down to a street level and writing more personal stories based on the characters' pain and relationships is far more grounding, and I really did feel bad for Peter Parker in this one. At the same time, it was great seeing him just function as Spider-Man, stopping normal crimes, fighting villains, being beloved by the populace, all the while showing Peter staring lifelessly ahead in his apartment when he has nothing to do while covered in bruises and having no one to talk to outside of work. The worst type of workaholic life because they don't have anything outside of work. In fact, it kind of reminds me of Mr. Beast's life.
I understood that reference.
Meanwhile, Spider-Man does actually interact with a wide range of other Marvel characters. Punisher, Hulk, Black Widow, which does a decent job explaining what these characters are doing, what's happening in the world, and why no one else is interfering with this issue. With Black Widow outright calling it small potatoes, proving that the whole new Avengers thing doesn't work because these are the Thunderbolts who will trip and stumble drunkenly through everything despite talking a big game. Which, does fit. And I do have to give it to this film. This was perhaps the best advertisement for the MCU in a long while, because it actually made me want to go back and watch everything, even though it's been a coin flip if things are going to be trash or fun. Although I do feel like I need a spreadsheet at this point to remember all the storylines, characters, and world-altering consequences that have happened over and over and over again. Along with, actually remembering what Marvel wants us to remember and for us to forget, because they'll never reference the failed projects ever again past this point. It's Spider-Man's interactions with these characters and others that's the best part of the film. Him and the Punisher bouncing off of each other, him and Banner talking shop through science jargon nonsense, him and the police chief bantering back and forth, Him and Black Widow, you know what? I don't know what to call that one. It kind of felt like she was seducing him the whole time by forcing him to strip down and see her in a sauna. Meanwhile, he was very uncomfortable and in his underwear while she was openly oogling him as he stepped into the warm water. Good to know that this type of humor and fan service is still okay if it exclusively involves men. Look, I'm not outright saying that Black Widow is acting as the Harvey Weinstein of the MCU. I'm just heavily implying it.
Tell me the age a kid is too old to sleep with a what he said?
Anyway, Tom Holland has a lot of chemistry with a lot of different people. Spider-Man and Punisher bouncing off of each other was great, even if the Punisher was kind of redundant and only ever caused more trouble than anything else. And Peter's banter with other characters reminded me of the best part of Age of Ultron, where the Avengers were just messing around at a party and having a good time. The same thing could be said for Peter bouncing off of both Ned and MJ. While the dialogue wasn't anything phenomenal or anything, the fact that these actors obviously genuinely like each other and have a good time together really helps elevate everything. It's probably why half of the actors in Brand New Day were also in The Odyssey.
Really makes you think.
And as a critic of both Tom Holland and Zendaya as not actually being the best actors in the world, meaning that they get a lot of jobs because they're well-liked, good people, and easy to work with. But I often see them as their own real-life personalities in the roles rather than the characters. I do have to admit, though, that they do have amazing chemistry together, which, you know, makes sense. It would be very concerning if they didn't bring out the best in each other while on screen. Of course, the writers were desperately trying to think of a way that MJ could be a part of the story other than being a damsel in distress and a love interest. They did kind of fail at that, but the chemistry between these two really carried it forward and made me believe this relationship because they are actually in a relationship. You can hear the real yearning, longing, and pain in their voices, along with their expressions actually being phenomenal in their scenes together. They're probably imagining if this type of situation actually happened to them, and the results show for themselves. My little tiny Grinch heart was actually moved slightly by a comic book movie. I know, the unthinkable happened.
First, let's get one thing straight. I'm not crying. I'm just sweating through my eyes.
Besides the fun character interactions, the next best part was the action. Not going to lie, CG all over the place with every little thing in this film. So much so that it was distracting at times, but also, none of it looked cheap, and it's always nice to see Spider-Man fighting like actual Spider-Man. Going out of his way to keep civilians unharmed, holding back and being creative in order to avoid outright killing his opponents. All the while using his brain against the enemies and the odds that he can't handle through raw, brute force alone. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that he fights the Hulk when it's all over the advertisements. Obviously, Spider-Man can't physically defeat the Hulk, so he became creative while holding back and talking Banner down. That's the kind of combat I like to see in this type of film, and it's all over the place. Until the end where it becomes Dragon Ball Z, which, you know, at least it all looked cool and had an emotional payoff, so I'm not going to be too mad about the climax actually being explosive at the end.
I mean, it's alright, like...
With the character interactions good, the action fun, the setup solid, the emotions powerful, and the various shots of the web swinging rather creative, that leads to the other parts of the storytelling process. In terms of a setting, Spider-Man kind of has to be in New York. It does not feel right to have him anywhere else outside of Avengers space shenanigans. It's my biggest complaint with Homecoming and Far From Home. Spider-Man being in other cities really doesn't fit all that well. So I can't complain other than the fact that I question how MCU New York is still even standing at this point, considering that half of the metropolis gets destroyed on a monthly basis at this point, especially considering that a single building almost collapsing in real life put the entire real life city on standby. Luckily no one was hurt, but I do not believe in any way that the rebuilding and fixing process could handle this level of constant cataclysms.
I'm just saying.
As for the plot, it is certainly there and functionable. The narrative is more of a personal and emotional one for Peter and the main antagonist. who I will spoil in great detail soon. Speaking of which, this is your official spoiler warning. Brand New Day was a super fun movie which felt like a comic book movie brought to life in both the best and worst ways possible. While there are problems with the plot and the small details, it was a fantastic fun time. The best standalone, besides, cameos and references, Spider-Man movie since Spider-Man 2, because I'm not all that fond of the home movies if I'm being honest. But I really like this, and if you're still here, I'm going to spoil everything. Ready? The main villain is Jean Grey. Yes, the X-Men Jean Grey, the Dark Phoenix Jean Grey, one of the most powerful and dangerous characters in this reality, Jean Grey. And also, secretly one of the most sociopathic, even when she's functioning as a hero. Yeah, I said it, and I'm not ashamed of it, it's the truth. She abuses her powers at every single possible turn, all the while being instantly forgiven or defended despite the fact that she commits horrible war crimes. And in that sense, Brand New Day fits the bill because she takes over people's brains, violates their bodily autonomy, puts them into danger, and threatens to flatline anyone who gets in her way without a single moment of remorse or hesitation. All the while having a much easier and more ethical way of achieving her goals by literally invading and controlling the minds of animals. Yeah, I wonder if a single, solitary person in the writing room thought of her controlling a bird or a fly to sneak into buildings and using them to jump to people. I'm being serious here right now. What is in the water in Hollywood? Why didn't a single writer think of this? Granted, the actual use of her powers and the visuals were amazing, with people stumbling like dominoes as she enters and exits their body. It was all great, well choreographed, and well acted. It actually felt different and creative because Spider-Man had no way to fight back without harming innocent people. I was really into the conflict at first, all the while originally wondering who exactly he was facing. I was racking my brain the whole time, but could not remember a single Spider-Man villain with the power to brain jump. Well, that's because it was an X-Men character whose admittedly first instinct would be to do just that, to basically rip the free will from everyone around her. Love the character, but she's actually a supervillain most of the time, even if people pretend otherwise. Meanwhile, Peter's entire arc involves his deteriorating mental health affecting his body. Because the Spider-Man part of his life is basically all that he has now, as constantly pointed out by everyone around him, even the Punisher of all characters, the use of arachnid hormones going haywire acting as symbolism for this imbalance in his life is actually pretty solid overall. Especially because there are many tie-ins, references, and parallels to the Raimi Spider-Man films, where Tobey Spider-Man's abilities were influenced by his mental state as well, all the while Tom Spider-Man desperately using technology, a stand-in for drugs, to force himself back to normal rather than dealing with the true issues. He was handling the symptoms rather than the cause. This was actually really good stuff and I really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Here, have a look. Good.
Overall, there wasn't a point where Peter made a decision where I didn't at least understand his mindset. From where he was in each specific point in the story, he made decisions which fit his character and his motivations. Being erased as a person in this world and losing Aunt May messed with his head enough that he doesn't have the willpower to start over, which is very realistic if I'm being honest. Because I've been there after losing people myself, and the parallel of Jean desperately trying to save her sister, the one person she actually cares about in the world, actually works really well and ties all the themes together. Except for the fact that she faces no consequences for abusing her powers in the worst ways imaginable. I mean, this entire plot happened because Peter tried his best to do something good, but then it backfired and he had to face the consequences. Meanwhile, Jean actively did terrible things and she faced no consequences. Not going to lie, until the Department of Damage Control was revealed to have killed Jean's sister in terrible experiments, I was like, yes, this young lady needs to be detained. She is brainwashing innocent people all the time, and I'm assuming doing so to steal whatever she wants. This is a metahuman slash mutant slash whatever the MCU is calling them that needs to be detained. We literally just saw Sarah destroy the bodily autonomy of half a dozen people before she was arrested. Telepathy is an entirely different ball game compared to other powers, and the fact that Jean and Sarah mind people constantly is swept under the rug. Now, Jean definitely should not have walked free without anyone watching over her after everything that happened. Of course, she shouldn't have been killed or anything, but this girl is not responsible enough to not be monitored at all times.
They put you in jail right away. No trial, no nothing.
And yes, she is in fact a stupid teenager. I get it. She's scared, she's alone, and she's desperate. But her very first instincts are to drive an armed car through the streets, put hundreds of people's lives in danger, actively ruin the lives of her victims, cause countless amounts of property damage, and borderline destroy the city by choice at the very end of the film. I understand her not asking for help and being paranoid about people, even Spider-Man, considering her backstory, but there was a better way to do this with only minor modifications to the script, because they already had her use Scorpion to try to break into the Department of Damage Control. Just have her keep doing that. Also, side note, it's good to see Nacho getting a payday like this. He's also going to be Bane in the new animated Batman movie. Good for him, one of my favorite actors out there right now. He definitely deserves a recognition.
No notes?
No notes.
No notes!
No notes.
No notes!
No notes. It's perfect.
Literally, a few tweaks would fix everything in the script and make it borderline perfect. Show through Spider-Man that the department has a security system which detects the use of powers when they approach the building rather than going through a scanner, which was dumb. Turret guns automatically will point at whoever approaches the building as long as they have powers. Because Jean doesn't want to get innocent people killed in this version, obviously she wants to do it in canon, she takes over villains to force her way in. She could use Rhino, Scorpio, Tombstone. In this scenario, she's fine with them getting hurt, but she only uses innocent people when she has to, like trying to flee from Spider-Man because he can see her mind transfer, and she's afraid that he will track it back to her main body. Because Peter keeps getting in the way, she resorts to threatening MJ, which I don't know how she accomplished to do in the original and is a giant plot hole when she wasn't around MJ in any conceivable way. Not to mention how she was being so openly cruel to Spider-Man while controlling MJ, it was outright sociopathic.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
Like I said, controlling animals could have fixed many different things. Jean could have followed Peter as a bird and intercepted them partway through their conversation on the rooftop. I don't know, pretending that MJ somewhat remembers him and then crushing his heart before threatening the person he loved most. That is super villain that has no empathy levels of evil right there. In this alternate scenario where she isn't unbelievably cruel for no reason, she could say that she doesn't want to hurt innocent people, but she needs to save the person she loved most, and she will do anything to do it if Spider-Man keeps getting in her way. This way, Jean doesn't come off as sociopathic like she does every time she brainwashes someone, because she acted very cruel and uncaring about people who did nothing wrong.
Hans, are we the baddies?
Because all the villains have been transferred out of New York because of her, and because she is feeling Sarah go through extreme amounts of pain through a mental connection, she could become desperate enough to use the Hulk. Then everything could happen the exact same way, because almost all of it is brilliant, with Peter becoming suspicious of Mr. Milchek, once again, fantastic actor, who I am glad is getting a payday, immediately after the attack. Ordering his AI assistant Evie to do a background check on someone possibly named Sarah Gray, because you can put those dots together, Peter. Then, instead of a random realization, Evie finds footage of Sarah being arrested and records of her death, causing Peter to rush to the department to save Jean.
Nope, never again.
And then everything happens the exact same way for the most part, because while corny, the final combat sequence and the "I'm both" line at the end was very fitting and pretty pretty cool overall. Maybe just add Uncle Ben and Tony Stark to the conversation between Jean and Peter. They don't even have to make an appearance, you could just mention them. I swear to God, they are allergic to saying, with great power comes great responsibility at this point. Also, keep the Punisher shooting Peter. It was a great show of conflict between their mindsets as vigilantes, along with the payoff for the comment earlier that the Punisher's way of doing things was going to get innocent people killed. And then, instead of her running off on her own and no one caring about it for some reason, despite the fact that she's extremely dangerous, Jean can wait at Peter's apartment because she wants to train under him to handle the responsibility which comes with great power. Because Peter knows the government will kill Jean, Spider-Man doesn't want her arrested, but he does acknowledge that he doesn't know the best way to train her because their abilities are so different. But he knows someone who might be able to help her because they've been trying to recruit him as a teacher for a while. Then he hands her a card for Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters.
Well, hang on, you've just... No, I like it. This is brilliant, but I like this.
Now, this might seem like a scathing breakdown of the plot, but it's really not. It's more nitpicks than anything else. In all honesty, this is a good script, which could have been great if there had been a bit more polish put into it. But also considering that two giant evil separate corporations were meddling in this film, along with making changes after screen testing, and a sense that this was two separate movies stapled together at the halfway point, it is a miracle that things turned out as well as they did. With everything in Peter's arc coming around to him connecting with people again, and finally being able to restart while no longer being consumed by what was lost. Almost everything was set up and paid off, especially in terms of the emotional journey. My biggest problem was that they wrote Jean to act like a sociopath without any consequences to her whatsoever. But I guess that does kind of fit Marvel Comics as of late.
This is worthless.
It's less than worthless, my boy.
Criticisms are used to help, to improve something, not to tear it down. I really like this film and think that a few tweaks to the script really could have improved it from something that was very good to the best Spider-Man movie ever made. It is, in fact, one of the most comic book films that you can imagine. So, meaning anyone who doesn't like action or comic films aren't going to like this. It's fast, it's loud, there's constant exposition because a lot is happening. There were tie-ins, references, and cameos galore. The MCU-isms were right there, especially with the humor, although I thought they did a better job because the emotional moments actually hit really hard. They didn't make a joke off of the suffering, at least, and I like that. But this is not going to change your mind if you do not like this type of storytelling. But at the same time, most things made sense. Although I really wish that the writers didn't make me fill in the gaps of how Peter can afford to live or why Bruce Banner regressed in his control over the Hulk. I assume it's because the university makes him wear the suppressor for the safety of the students just in case. Or it could be that his experiences dealing with his annoying cousin caused his mental control to outright crash. It could be that one. I could understand that.
This is quite a shock. On the other hand, it's not surprising in the least.
I think the aspect which really elevates this movie above its contemporaries, both in the MCU and in other comic book stories, are the emotions. Peter's depression is very realistic. His pain with Aunt May and MJ is palpable. His various dynamics and banter with others feel real. I really liked how his extreme goodness, empathy, and kindness are what allows him to defeat the Hulk and Jean Grey. I also really like how everyone loves and appreciates him in the city. You can tell that even the Punisher, of all characters, really likes him from the moment that they first interact, even if the Punisher is being an ass about everything. Spider-Man is just a good guy who saves the day because he's a good guy, because with great power comes great responsibility, and New York really appreciates him for that. That scene outside the hospital with everyone showing their support for Spider-Man and a little kid in a Spidey outfit fake shooting webs at Peter was unbelievably corny, but I loved it. Never mind the fact that New York turning on Peter because they believed a supervillain over Spider-Man was what led to Peter having his life erased to begin with. Never mind all that. They just love him now. Let's just go with it. Let's forget the bad aspects that came before and just focus on the good writing now.
Oh, pay no attention
Brand New Day is the best of comic books. They took storylines which were a bit flawed and had some rough edges. I am sorry, Home Saga fans, there were issues, and they used these storylines as a launching pad for a great new tale. There were cameos, references, laughs, real emotion, and appreciation of actual goodness for goodness sake. And I really like that, because I'm so tired of everyone being gray in terms of morality. I just want some good heroes out there now. It didn't feel like the movie was mocking Spider-Man for being what was effectively a Boy Scout. Everyone loved him for who he was, for being a good person. In fact, his ability to care, not his superpowers, are what saved the day. That, along with the shared pain of losing the people you love most. It was the mental conversation between Jean and Peter that really sold it for me and made me forget all of my previous complaints. The emotions in that scene were really intense, and I really liked it.
Will you excuse me, please?
In all honesty, Brand New Day is probably the best that the MCU has been in a long time. This was great. I would highly recommend it as a point to come back into the MCU if you haven't been a part of it for a long time. I want to see this film again at some point. Maybe not immediately, in a year or so. And it finally feels like the universe is regaining direction and focus since Endgame. I really hope that Doomsday is a bit of a reset and a refresh for everything, because we are at the point where comics usually need to be retconned by universe-shattering events, because I honestly cannot keep track of what they're going to consider canon moving forward. What is forgotten? What is remembered? You need to give me a spreadsheet, for the love of God. And hopefully the success of this film sends a message, because based on the way early showings were outright packed, this is going to make over $1 billion. And you know what? It deserves it. Great movie. I loved it.
I liked it.
But what do you think? Did you see the new film? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you completely disagree with me on all aspects, including the fact that the Home Saga films were a bit flawed? Tell me what you think down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, if you disagree with everything I have to say, that is perfectly fine. After all, everyone is entitled to their objectively wrong opinion.
You're horrible. You're an irredeemable monster.
What took you so long, idiot?
Thank you all so much for watching.
You're still here?
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. You bye. Boom.
Do not despair.